And now I invite here Alain Cardon, who is a Master Certified Coach since 2002, mostly recognized for systemic executive coaching, team coaching, and organizational coaching. He's also a systemic coach trainer and a supervised trainer. Has students in Romania, France, Belgium, Spain, and Brazil. So Alain, you have the floor. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me here, organizing this. Really. Yes. Clicker, clicker. Oh, yes. I have no slides. Sorry. If you want anything, actually, there's a website. It's I'll write it. metasystem-coaching.eu in English or .fr, and you can get information on the web. There's a lot of things on Facebook, LinkedIn, Kindle, YouTube, a lot of movies in French and English. So there's resources. They're free. Go out and get them. A lot of articles on my website. So I don't know what to say, really, without repeating myself. I found this day really exciting because of the mosaic of subjects and things that have to do with coaching. And I have, well, the privilege of closing the day with very interesting things, which puts a lot of pressure after hearing everything you've been doing in the workshops. Sometimes you feel I wasn't here, but I wasn't walking in. I was behind the wall listening and getting, little insights here and there. At any rate, the subject being the inner edge of coaching and the future of coaching. I forget the title, really. I think it's interesting to say, in a larger way, what is coaching? What do people say or mean when they say, I'm a coach? You hear a lot of people say this, probably a lot more than the ICF can measure. In France, I would say at least 50,000, 100,000 people say, I'm a coach. They come out of the woodwork every day, and coaching schools and things. I'm a coach, I'm a coach, I'm a coach. What does it mean? And I think it's interesting. I hear a lot of coaches that are trained coaches that come from schools that have a sort of exclusive or a cleavage type of to this. I think it's interesting, all these people that are saying, I'm a coach. Basically, if you look at it closely, they're saying, well, I'm a nutritionist coach, or I'm a yoga coach, or I'm a, whatever coach. What do they mean? What do they mean? And if you look at it a little closer, they're saying a number of things, which is, I want to get out of the machine. I want to become an independent person. I want to leave organizations. I want to leave really structured systems. I want to manage my own life, be my own boss, have my own hours. I want to accompany people's development in one way or the other. It could be through the body, it could be through the mind, it could be through whatever. It doesn't matter. So there's a common point about what could be considered a movement. And it is a movement that comes out of the millennial period. In other words, coaching is born around 1990. And the ICF was created in 1995. Okay? So coaching is a millennial type of movement. It's concomitant at the same time, synchronous with the internet, pop revolution, millennials. So you could probably say that anything that was before that doesn't fit in coaching, and coaching is accompanying the information revolution. It fits right in. Now, as a movement, you could say there's a huge, huge base in this movement, and it changed. So the jobs, I think, that are created in the United States today are self-created jobs. They're not created by corporations and companies. There are people who are creating their own jobs. So if you say this is kind of an idea of what's coming in the future, well, is everybody is going to start getting out of systems that are centralized, controlling, etc., and are going to link themselves through the web or whatever, through new means to the whole world. Actually, you don't need to belong to systems. Some people talk about, liberating organizations, but actually maybe it's liberating yourself from organizations. The real liberated organization has disappeared in its controlling, centralized way, which is very often top-down and defined from, deciders all over the place. There's a kind of political equivalent that's going on in the world too, which is populist movements, you could say, are basically people fed up with the machines. They want to have the machines explode. They also, a lot of populist movements are closing in on themselves, but also they're saying we're fed up with the old politics. Okay? We'd rather break the old politics in a stupid way than continue with the same old game that is a cleavage game, usually the right against the left. Now, if the right against the left is happening in your brain, you've got a serious problem. Okay? In other words, if you start thinking in terms of what this means in the world, it kind of shows the current issue, and coaching is right in the middle of this. It's an interesting, okay, I need to say something about this. Everything I'm going to say is just my point of view, right? It's just like everybody else. I'm not pretending to have a vision of the future. This is just, now I'm systemic in a way, so I make links between things that shouldn't be linked, like the right and the left fighting each other in here and things like this. I found one exercise is interesting. Are reminded by this morning exercise, do this with your foot and your arm. Now both on the right. Try another that is the right and left. In other words, do a clockwise movement, that's clockwise, with both your hands. One is not clockwise. Yes, exactly. One is not clockwise. You should be going like this. Okay? And then you can reverse it, right? This kind of exercise really interestingly connects the right brain to the left brain. There's a lot of exercises like this to get your synapses on one side to understand how to function with the other side. There's alternate breathing in yoga and stuff, and things that left to right. Really practice it. It's interesting because it develops connections that, but I mean, you have good connections on the right, and you keep trying, okay? I hope you will sleep tonight. Some people in the bed, Systemic thinking starts with you. In other words, you have to start thinking in a completely different way, perceiving different ways, receiving things different ways, integrating them different ways, reacting different ways. And there's a lot of things I think that, the future of coaching will need to go there. Why? Because it's dealing with more complexity, which doesn't mean it has to be more complicated, actually. In other words, if you grasp the complexity of something, the solution could be very simple. Some people think that complexity means complicated. Actually, if you're simplistic and find the solution, it will be very complicated. Because simplistic problems don't have easy solutions. You're making it too simplistic in your definition. Now, if you take into account in the definition of a situation the largest complexity, you may have a very simple solution. It's kind of paradoxical. And in systems analysis, a lot of things that we considered contradictory in the past are actually much more paradoxical. It's a different way of thinking. I think in coaching today, there's a lot of paradoxes that aren't dealt with. Right? For instance, one measure of excellent coaching is that your client quits the organization, divorces, changes a lot of things in their lives. It's a measure of excellent coaching. Right? Who disagrees? Or not? Now, if it's another type of excellent coaching, you coach the person to become a change agent in the system. But if the system really doesn't want to change, the family, the organization, et cetera, well, if you have a client that's really growing, they'll say, okay, I can't continue growing here. I need to find another place to grow. And it's a healthy decision, you could say. But if the organization is paying for the coaching, you say it's contradictory. You're actually increasing the turnover. It's not ethical. You think so? Now, you may also think that the company knows this and says they designate people they want to get rid of, saying we want to find to integrate them. Come on. Okay? In other words, a lot of the coaching is designated coaching focused on people that don't fit, quote unquote, because we can't control them. I had once a coach, I had to coach a brilliant marketing guy who came in, and actually he was hired to say, you're brilliant, come and change the organization through the marketing. In other words, we want the marketing to change so the people in the company start changing the way they see themselves. He was hired as a change agent. Within 3 months, he had to have coaching, okay, because he didn't fit. He was getting pressure all over the place. Okay. Now, he was protected for a while because the CEO had hired him and protected him, and so he started doing really good things and got promoted almost like, very quickly. And then the CEO left. Okay. So he didn't last very long after that, obviously. Okay. In other words, and he went elsewhere. He's an excellent change agent, but it just shows that there's paradoxes in everything. As a coach, don't take anything for its face value. I'm always, looking at the opposite of what is said. I like the idea this morning of measurements. Okay, for instance, in a lot of companies, you have a lot of talk about we are a tripod. Okay, the shareholder is important. The clients, the customers are important, and our personnel is important. And we rest on those three. And so I say, okay, how often do you measure the financial results? Well, it's day to day. You lose $2, tomorrow they're on your back. How often do you measure your personnel? How often do you measure client satisfaction? Okay? You are what you measure, you become what you measure, and you talk a lot about what you don't measure. Okay? So the talk is reverse proportion to what they actually do, and what they do is what they measure. Okay? So it's really interesting to come in an organization and say, if you really cared about the people, something happens today, you know it tomorrow, it's rectified after tomorrow. If you don't measure, it's going to be a lot of bullshit. You'll have, posters on it and speeches on it and and hope that it's marketing about something, but it's not measurement. Okay? Same thing with clients, customers, if you don't immediately measure. That is a systemic principle. In other words, in quantum physics, something doesn't exist if you can't measure it. The day you can measure a particle or whatever, because they call it a particle, but it's an idea, the day they can start measuring it as, I don't know, the reality. Coaching is about accompanying people's self-realization. realization is reality. In other words, if you can't measure the results, well, you'll need coaching for a long time because that's a lot of talk. As soon as you got results, then you know you have achieved, you have realized something, you have brought it in reality. So let's be practical also. Systemic approach is very practical. Okay. Now, to jump on something else, everybody knows in systems thinking there's, I'm going all over the board, I hope you can follow, right? Attention deficit disorder, I need some pills, etc. So this is a new reality. In other words, follow around. And the mosaic today is really great because you can wonder what holds all this together. But there's something you will feel as you go along in the day with a different mosaic of coaching. I think coaching is a huge mosaic. Now, one thing that's common, I think, in systems analysis, you heard about the saying, or we talked about this today, think globally and act locally. Big local, they call it big local. Okay. Now, big local is maybe shortening it, but it's understand global. Think global. Act local. The two go together. On a personal level, if you are global, you are focused on your core, on your being, on your purpose. Okay? If you don't act local, you're not systemic. Now, if you act local, but it's not linked to your core, it's not linked to the purpose, it's not really the center of what you need to do, then it's just a bunch of actions. It has no meaning, and it's action for action. There was something about to be or to do. Yeah, I'm a Sinatra man. It's do be do be do. Okay. Well, Strangers in the Night. I had to look it up. I remember Doobie Doobie Doo, but I couldn't remember the title. So, to do, to act, in accordance with your being. This is everywhere, and the core. But you need to see in the micro sequences what's going on. This is systemic. Okay, so you start a meeting, for instance. This is in an organization, and you say, it's 10 o'clock, shall we start? Somebody will immediately say, George and Henry are missing. You know the trick. Locally, in a fractal, what does it mean? In a fractal, one says, let's start at 10. He's focused on the contract, the process, effectiveness, etc. The one who immediately say so and so are missing are counter-proposing, let's wait for the latest. I'm the nice guy. We don't want to make somebody feel that we're not covering up for him. So one is focused on being effective, the other one is showing I'm focused on relationship. To take the first one hostage, you need to say it loud enough so the rest of the group will support you in the relational dimension, right? And so you're saying to the person who says, let's start on time, you're blind, you didn't notice two people are missing, which is obviously not the case. Most of the time, the people know who's there and who's missing. He's just saying, let's start. Now that's a fractal. If that happens here in an organization and there and there and there, what do you know? You know that each department adapts to the slowest to protect them. You know that the client's going to wait. You know you have a process that will not be respected to protect the least competent person in terms of time management. It shows in a few seconds. You don't need to have an analysis of the global if you know how to catch what's going on in the local. Things happen in a fractal way in systems analysis. You need to listen a few indicators in a few seconds and you can have a big picture. Now, it could be something else. This is just an example. It could be, okay, I'm the guy that's going to be rebellious. If you had said, let's wait for the two last people, I would say, no, it's time, you know. In other words, somebody will take the opposite of whoever starts. You need to listen to the quality of what's happening in a few seconds. Now, it's an illusion to think that you can change the global without changing the local. You need to start acting locally. You can't change the global. In other words, all the talk and I don't know, energy put on changing company culture, while in each meeting they wait for the latest, it's not going to happen. In other words, what you do is can't change what you are, what you do, and what you do is local. It's in every second and it's in every movement. There's nothing to let go. You know? So, in a way, I think there's a huge range of development in coaching in the future. Paradoxically, most coaches want to be independent, solitary workers. How is this coherent with accompanying systems to work collectively? I've seen so many coaching communities that are more political than whatever I see in any organization. They're more competitive with each other. They don't collaborate between coaches. They're solitary, me first. Okay? That's the coaching world. In other words, getting out of the machine is not going to get you to learn how to do something else. You've got to start acting locally in everything you do with other coaches and look at how you participate in building a future that is not solitary, competitive, me first, etc., etc. It's a huge challenge for a lot of coaches. I've seen some that try partnerships here and there and try to learn how to build a new type of organization, a new type of partnership that doesn't fit the old systems that they don't want anymore. They know that. The future in terms of larger systems needs to be invented, reinvented between coaches, and it's happening very, very slow. Talking about collaboration is not so easy for coaches. There's being generous between coaches is not so easy from a lot of things I see, you know, in the coaching community. So getting liberated from the machine is the easy part. What's your community development part that you're going to learn together by supporting each other, growing together? The market is huge, really huge for coaching. The only thing that's limiting the development of the market is the coaches that are all solitary, independent, fighting each other, et cetera, me first. The market could develop 10 times as fast if there was a really strong modeling coaching community. Yeah. That's an interesting thought. In other words, how will coaches learn by starting themselves instead of fighting each other? My school is better than your school. My tool is bigger than your tool, which is really quite a macho statement, really. Comparing tools, come on, grow up. I find a lot of things in the coaching community really kind of archaic. The good part, which is we want to get out of the system. We want to reinvent something. We want to do something that for the future of humanity and so on and so forth. The motivation is there. The hard work is starting. I think there's a lot of work to be done in the coaching community with the coaches themselves, between themselves, to become a vehicle for the future of what's going to happen as a system in the larger world. This is just thoughts. Okay? Maybe questions so I can start talking about something else. Move to something else.
So the future for coaching is for the coaches to collaborate more. This would be a conclusion.
It is the need in the world. You will see probably that the organizations that call most for individual coaching are organizations where they're individualists and where they seriously need team coaching. But they will reinforce individualism, each person wanting his individual coach. So in a way, paradoxically, whatever an organization asks a coach to accompany may be exactly what you don't want to do. Okay, paradoxically. In other words, I would bet that most IT organizations, individualists that, have a lot of difficulty working in partnerships and so on and collaborating, and they're, much more territorial. But the IT is just an example, an engineer competition and stuff like that, are the ones that ask most for coaching. Individual coaching. Okay. And team coaching is just starting, I would say, worldwide. Most coaches want to become individual coaches and may become very good individual coaching. The world's need is a collective maturity. Even as individual coaches do it, but start working with other coaches. Work in teams, work in networks that are real networks. Learn how to commit with each other, how to deliver, how to measure, etc. Getting liberated from the machine doesn't mean throwing out all the measurements. It's not so easy. It's not so easy. If you've been in an organization most of your life, it could be compared to having an exoskeleton. In other words, the organization will structure you, direct you, give you, etc., give you a place to go, give you an office, sell for you, etc. The day you become independent, you have to develop your own backbone. It's not an exoskeleton. Nothing's going to be there to hold you. Developing your backbone is not against other backbones. You could develop backbones collectively, okay, without having an exoskeleton collectively. I'm giving images here, but there's something that needs to be developed, I think, in the coaching community. Now, if you take the pyramid, I would say, from which I started, which is coaching is a movement, fine. I think it's really great to have this movement. Now, in the movement, there's more or less, actually layers, and you could say, some are saying we're the real coaches, okay? And in terms of associations worldwide, I would say the ICF has done a very good job structuring the coaching community and saying what's the real coaches. And there's also EMCC here. And then there's local associations in different countries. In France, we have our own little, Gallic village saying, let's keep the invaders out and so on. And it's part of it, a large part is Anglo-Saxon also. Of those two, in a way, EMCC is more England, ICF is more, North America, Anglo-Saxon. I'm thinking in terms of systems, usually major change comes from the fringes. It never comes from the center. So these are controlling centers in a way. I'm not being negative about this. I'm saying this is necessary. At the same time, some of the fringes of system, which is, in the periphery, you don't have the DNA. The DNA wants to make sure nothing changes over generations, and we keep the control, and we put our kids in our place when we die, and so on. And so what most governments do, and executives teams do, and so on. Dynasties, but control change. Change usually comes from the periphery. Change is So I'm wondering today, where's the periphery of coaching worldwide that will start doing something different? Maybe not against. I think different is not against. Different is complementary. So I would say, for instance, you're reminding me of something. What would be systemic coaching core skills? What are the markers for systemic coaching? Okay. What are the new theories behind systemic coaching? Personally, I'm looking a lot in quantum mechanics. Okay. I'm going to start concluding. Or what time is it finish? 6:30? 6? 6:15. 6:15. Okay. I'm looking a lot in quantum mechanics and physics theory for systems, because that's almost pure system thinking that is out of the past and stuff like that. A lot of things are happening recently, but if you say, okay, let's take some old theory, which is E equals mc squared. Everybody knows that, right? Now, what does it mean in coaching? It's really interesting. E is momentum, energy. Okay, we could say the client that's really moving. You want this. You want the client to get the momentum and get really moving and so on. Now, usually, what's the result for Einstein is, well, this is mass. Okay? How do you get mass moving? Now, if you're traditional in traditional physics, well, you push the mass and get momentum, right? So you have to apply energy to mass, and the mass gets moving. And of course, that means you need to push. Now, if you try to push the client to get the client to move, that's not coaching, right? Yeah. So you can't use traditional physics. Now, it does get to be a bore when the client says, I don't know. He's bringing mass. It gets heavier and heavier. Okay? Or when the client starts saying, here's my problem, blah, 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 blah. And the more you listen, the heavier you get. You say, what? Now, that's the client's function, is to bring mass, right? Because if he could move his mass, he wouldn't need a coach. So clients are designed to be heavy. If you're Einsteinian, what do? You apply the speed of light squared. In other words, you interrupt the client before he even settles the mass. Interruption, immediate interruption, should be one of the key competencies in lightning coaching. Listening to the client for half an hour and getting heavier and heavier and say, Jesus, I'm not his mother, etc. Come on. So if you can interrupt the client immediately with a flash and just blow the mass and put him in another dimension, you're not respecting a number of coaching rules that I heard about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As a matter of fact, one way is to say, wait, we don't even have a contract. I've got my mass that I want to put in the middle. Let us define the contract before we even listen to you, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be mass against mass, and that's going to last a while. So in a way, what's the definition of excellent coaching? Well, it's done in one session. It was Margaret Kriegbaum, some people know here, that told me once, actually in coaching, at most, there's 2 useful sessions, the first and the last. All the rest is an accordion. Now, if you tell the client, all you need is 2 sessions, they'll say, oh, no, I need much more. So the client actually is buying time. The more you say you need 20 sessions, the happier he is. If you say you just need 1 session, 20 minutes is enough, and you're out the door. So, no, I got this for years and years. I've been making it last. Don't solve it in half a second. Come on. Okay? The real contract in coaching maybe is to give the client a good reason to say, I know I have an issue, but I'm dealing with it. I'm being coached. How long? Well, it's not sure yet. Okay? In other words, coaching may be serving a lot of other purposes than we think, social purposes and so on. What are some indicators and measures that need to get into coaching if you're going to become a completely new age coach? You know, questioning, speeding things up massively at the speed of light, not massively, speeding it up at the speed of light. So this is new perspective. I think the coaching world is way open. There's a lot of things to explore. Now, the inner core of coaching needs to be explored. For me, it's completely different than saying you need to add things to coaching and add things to coaching and add things to coaching. In other words, in some cases, I see so many accessories bought by coaches to differentiate themselves by adding this tool and that tool and that tool. There's so many accessories, you can't find the car anymore. You go on LinkedIn, and they say, I'm trained in this and that and that and that and that and that and that. You know, the list is huge. It's like a sign of competency. I would say, why differentiate yourself? Paradoxically, it's what all beginning coaches want to do. So trying to differentiate yourself is the best way to get lost in the mass of all the people who think they need to differentiate themselves. To really differentiate yourself from the people who want to differentiate themselves, you need to stop trying to differentiate yourself. You understand? In other words, you don't need extra tools and frills and chills. You need to become really good in the inner core of coaching. The inner core of coaching is very simple. It's quantum. There's nothing there. In other words, in quantum physics, actually, there's more energy, more mass, more potential in empty space than in everything that clutters the universe. Planets and suns and anything you can see is clutter. In coaching, the core of coaching is actually silence. It's not having tools. It's not bringing anything. It's pushing the client into his void. So you'll find his fundamental core, because the core of the client is in the void. Clutter is just a way of avoiding the void. Avoiding the void. Okay. So there's things I think that need to be in coaching. You need to come back to the real fundamentals, the real core of coaching. And I would say it begins with silence. In coaching, all the tools are designed to push the client into the silence and into the void, because that's where they'll find themselves. They need to stop the clutter, their own mass that they bring, their story. I think a lot of things that have been said today go in the same direction. In other words, it's really finding the inside of the inside and starting from there. To develop as a coach, I would say start learning how to be in your own silence, in your own void. Start reconnecting with what we call in corporations the core business. What's my core business being here in this life? If you don't start from that core, you're just going to do a lot of actions. Okay? But you need to be local again. In other words, start from the fundamental of the fundamental of the inner, your inner edge. What's your inner edge? Don't expand with a lot of external accessories. They look good, yeah, marketing gimmicks. But everybody does it, so you won't be different. The only way to be different is really go in there completely. The clients will feel it, they'll come to you for it. They'll know that's where they need to start, and you'll get good clients and you get good work and good results. But it starts from there. Then everything fits in that inner core, actually, in that fundamental purpose, well, it will show in all the fractals and everything you do, and every little thing you do is going to, because the universe is fractal, right? That's another theory. Everything you do locally affects the global. Okay? It's a way of changing the global fractal, and we're all connected in that. So it's a huge field. It gets very spiritual. Okay, it's a way of talking about it, but it's about the global connection in your local actions, really. I'm going around in circles here. Give me a question that'll throw me in another loop. Somebody's got a question. Yes. Loud enough or? Okay. Okay. Me too. Get used to it. It's forever. Okay. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, when you're trained, when you feel that you're starting to be good, but even before, today, get a list of everybody you've known professionally since high school. Make your list. In front of them, put their phone numbers, their email, right? They're your immediate network, right? A lot of them, you lost sight of them. Send a letter saying, oh, I'm doing this and that. We lost sight of each other, just to recontact. And by the way, I'm doing a coaching school because, and by the time I'm finished, I'll call you to see if we can do things together. Nice to get back together if you know, whatever. In other words, tell people before you're ready that you're getting ready. Why? Because if you tell them when you're ready, they're going to say, where does this come from? But if you tell them you're doing it, they're getting used to it. It's like when government wants to raise the taxes. They don't do it. They'll say, well, raise taxes in January. Okay? By the time it's January, you're cooked. You're ready to take it. Okay? So don't announce immediately. Give them, okay. Then you can say, now I'm getting ready. I may, you know, if you want to have do some work on some of the goals you have, I'm available, and I need the training, etc. I need your help. Learn to ask. It's not for them, it's for you. Okay? So learning to ask is, you can do it a lot of different ways, but ask. Okay? And then when somebody says, okay, I'd like to, you know, try it and do something, say, okay, the first 2 are free. I'm still in training, but after that, announce a price. Okay? And a limit, because we'll also say, okay, so long as it's free, it'll last forever, and then you'll get stuck. But announce it from the start. I do that today. People call me and say, you know, I heard somebody told me I needed coaching, gave me a number. So the first thing I say is, don't believe everything people tell you. Okay? But what is it for? In other words, I want them to talk about why they're calling, not coaching in me. I want them to say, okay, there's this issue, etc. And I start coaching right away. Of course, after a while, they'll say, this is coaching. Then I'll say, yep. And let's finish, you know, so many more minutes. And then I'll say, okay, we can continue if you think that this is worth it. In which case, it's so much that I suggest, you know, 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever. And if you want it, we already use 30 minutes. If you don't want it, you got 30 minutes free. So I'm going to tempt them to stop. Okay? They will be tempted to stop because it's free. They need to see the added value they got and say, this is worth it. But they need to have added value in the 30 minutes. Okay? So you do it before you sell, which is never what the ICF will tell you. Okay? But it's interesting that you don't talk about what coaching is, etc. You accompany people, they call you because they have a goal, they want to achieve something, they have a concern. Focus on it immediately, create the partnership, then the rest will flow. Then you establish the contract and so on and so forth. But the first is establish a real coaching relationship that they know that you know how to do it and they get added value. But start in your immediate environment. You don't need internet. Okay? You don't need a picture and so on and so forth. Now, you may have the wrong idea of internet. In other words, internet is to create volume. If you do things on Facebook, it's your friends. They know you anyway. Might as well establish a relationship. The only internet real strategy is through search engines, in which case you have to give and give and give and give. You will get a return. Okay, internet is a giving system. You need to feed, and then you get the return. You put your picture, millions of people have their pictures. It's not going to get anywhere on search engines. Okay, so for the time being, I would say for the next few years, develop your immediate network. It's with sales, it's not with marketing. It's with sales. In other words, calling people, seeing them, being with them, being a coach. And then they'll send you other people and you'll develop as a coach. And then you have things that you may say, oh, I want to write an article, etc. A website becomes useful because you have something to give. Okay? Now, but you want to create a lot of passage by giving. And that takes time. I mean, I have a website, I don't know, there's 10 to 15,000 visits per month from 150 countries. But why do they come? Well, they search on an engine and they read and they take. I don't even know who they are. I don't even call them. It's, creating movement. Now, in some part of it, I'm creating some value. In other words, some people buy a questionnaire through which they get, God knows how many, 40 pages of feedback. Very immediately on supervision or management skills. So you'll create, with a lot of movement, then you can create secondary income, small income. Okay, but you need 10,000, 20,000, out of which a certain number will buy and you get income. But that's internet income. It's passive income. It's a completely different strategy. Or else, I mean, you can sell with the people you know and word of mouth. Word of mouth is what gets you clients. And you can ask. Now, I worked with a CEO last week in Romania. I said, I'll be in Moldavia in 2 weeks. Could the CEO there be as interesting as you for an interesting adventure, for a nice adventure? And the CEO answered, I've been in his job 16 years. I don't think you should bother. So, okay. I'm not looking just to work. I'm looking for interesting things to do. Now the CEO I talk to will probably think of other places and say, call so-and-so instead. If you don't ask, you don't get. Sometimes I call old clients and say, I suspect you've been cheating on me with another coach. When do we work together again? Now, it's okay to say that's between a guy and a guy, of course, because what should you say this? Or, you've got to stay on a clean line. But using humor is the best way to sell. Being direct, asking directly, having fun when you do it, okay? So, of course, it takes practice. You may need as much practice selling yourself as you do in coaching, okay? Pardon me? Oh, well, you develop confidence by doing, by practice, okay? So, do, start doing, you'll be, okay? This is something that is clearly in what we call epigenetics. Okay? You know this. You know epigenetics. You take two twins, they have the same genetics. They have different experiences in their life. At the end of their lives, their genes will be different. You modify your DNA through your experience. And your experience is communication, it's life experience, it's learning. The more you learn, the more you change your synapses and even your DNA. It's epigenetics, okay? So you need to understand that do is really there. You need to do to be. And you need to do in the way you want to be, okay? Then you become what you do. It's a circle. Don't look for cleavage. In other words, in systems analysis, everything is connected. You can't say, is it better to do or to be, you know, or this or that. All this is cleavage. It is 0 or 1. It's the machine. You have to choose the right or the left. Come on. You know, what about both, you know? So become much more inclusive. Systems analysis is totally inclusive in the way you think. It all comes together. Any other nice question? Beginner question. I love beginner questions.
You mentioned before team coaching. Can you expand more on this? What skills do you need? I don't know, more than for individual coaching?
How many people want to become team coaches? How many people want to become team coaches? Okay, some people know the question I'm going to ask. I've trained so many people in this room. But don't answer, please. Well, okay. What's your fundamental motivation for becoming a team coach? Come on, give me one. Huh? Performance, team performance. Now, what's your fundamental? I'm going to be hard-nosed about this. What's your fundamental motivation? Your fundamental motivation. Okay, we could play this for a long time because it's a guessing game. Yes? Make money? Yeah. Okay. You have one here? Yes. Self what? Okay, you're getting close. We could say anybody that comes from a really weird family will want to do team coaching to solve their unfinished gestalts in the present. In other words, you're going to attract family teams that are like your family with the same kind of issue, the same kind of patterns, and you're going to have to work on yourself facing your family. Okay? So the crazier your family, the more you're well-trained to face any kind of weird team. And a lot of people that want to develop towards team coaching actually are quite well prepared and scared like hell to be in front of the team because they know they will attract a team that fits their learning purpose. I mean, you don't choose a team that doesn't choose you. You fit together well, and you'll have to solve your common issues like individual coaching. It's systemic, right? You attract the clients that really bug you because they're like you. Right? And you have something to learn that the client needs to learn and so on. This is, you know, there's no such thing as separation. It's the same with a team. Okay? Now, I'm really good at team coaching because I come from a really weird family. Okay, I won't go into details, but God bless my mother. She really is a survivor in this. But, whoa. Okay? So network systems, you know, brothers and sisters with different names all over the world and so on, I know. Yeah, I needed years. Well, I had to be accompanied for a long time through therapy, or you could say supervision is really important because then you get to know what you're dealing with in your clients, okay? In yourself, in your client, because it's your issue. So that's the important things about systems analysis. There's no out there. The out there is you. You need to be aware of this. You're attracting you, you know, and the issues you need to solve. And what's great is the client or the team or the organization is paying you to solve your problems. You know, great. And theirs. It's a loop. You're working together. Coaching is a peer relationship. It's a millennial issue. We're between peers. We accompany clients who accompany us in our co-development, and you need to be thankful to the clients because when you accompany a client well, you accompany yourself well. It's the same issues. Mm-hmm. If you're not aware of this existentially, you need to dig deeper in your core, okay, and get supervision on this because this is where the keys are. You don't do things to people out there from, you know, a top position. It's a complete, you know, co-development issue. It's clear? So you're attracted to teams because there's something you know how to do with systems. When you were this big, you couldn't change the system. You know, it was overwhelming. You still have the same emotions, but today you can get tools and approaches, and thinking you're an adult, you can develop a way to accompany the team in you that needs to be repaired, which is actually the family. No, you have a lot of options if you come from a crazy family. Because you step in the team and right away you have much more intuitions. You were trained. Everybody was trained in a system. Everybody is trained more by systems than by individuals. Okay, this is psychological, it's simplistic. In other words, you'll say my mother's influence, my father's influence. Actually, it's a system influence. The relationship between the father and mother changes, and that influences everything, and there's an older brother and this and that. We have a systemic training in our background that is massively undervalued because we singularize people and say it's their influence. Actually, it's a co-influence. It's a constellational influence. And that's our training that we don't even look at because we don't have the model that tells us, no, you have to cut it up. First your mother, when you're done, then your father. Come on. Okay? They married each other. They're in you, you know, with their fights and everything else. There's no such thing as separate beings in your constellation. You understand? So when you have this and you become aware of it and you embrace it, you will see that you have a massive amount of tools in how to survive in systems and help them grow. You need to go there. Okay, it's a systems approach. Now it's a complex system because an individual is the same thing, actually, and the relationship with an individual is the same thing. But there's approaches and tools that can help you along and so on. The main tool actually is get your intuition right so you know what you know, and you know a lot. There's no such thing as tools out there. You know, get to know what you know from your systems training in your crazy families. Now, there's no such thing as a normal family, right? A normal family is crazy. Okay, so take everything they trained you. That's what they were for. That's why you went there. Okay, because if you didn't want that training, you wouldn't have gone there. I'm going all over the board, and it's time. Thank you very much. I love you.
Thank you so much, Alain, and I keep you here with me because I want to personally thank you for all your contribution. As a matter of fact, Alain Cardon brought coaching in Romania 11 years ago. And I really want to invite you here with me. Everybody who made fundamentals or any workshops with Alain, please come here. And Janina, please come. Yeah. Janina, it is compulsory. Come here. Yeah, because here we are a very small part of Romania that make coachings with Alain, and we prepare you a sign of distinction. So, Alain, driven to breakthrough, for passion, excellence, and commitment, for the confronting and empowering coaching approach, for the seeds you plant here. You have inspired us over the years, and you change our lives. We love you, and you know that already. So gratefully yours, Romanian Systemic Teams. Thank you.